So we have Mike, who is the owner of Nautilus liverboards, and we also have Gregory and Kate from his team here. And they are going to share you all about the Nautilus dive adventures, and they specialize up and down the Baja California coast. They have some exciting information for you. They're going to talk to you about anything from cage diving with great whites to the Socorro Islands, and all the way up and down that area. It's just a fabulous, diverse, and exciting area, and a personal favorite of both mine and Terry's, who is on our team. So without further ado, I am going to hand you over to Mike, Greg, and Kate.
Good afternoon, everyone. Hello from British Columbia. We're actually up in Canada. Our operation is based in Mexico. I'm on a tiny little island in quarantine after returning from Mexico several days ago. So apologies in advance if my audio cuts out at all. With that in mind, I'm just going to turn off my video and talk. So what I'd like to share with you today is mostly information on the great white sharks of Guadalupe Island. Guadalupe is a one-day sail from Ensenada, Mexico, just across the border from the USA, and the fly-in point is San Diego. And I believe this is the best place in the world to see great white sharks. And I'm going to explain why. Next, please, Kate. So, Guadalupe Island, 25 miles long, 180 miles from shore. It's a bit of a crossing to get there. We visit in peak season. Which is July until November. Once we're there, we're on the northwest bay on the island, which is where we have identified 366 different great white sharks. And the white shark diving over the years has just got better and better. The bay that we anchor in is calm, protected, visibility 125 feet to 150 feet. We know that because on our big boats, we can see the sharks approaching from the anchor chain at the opposite end of the boat. Next, please. So just a short video just to give you a bit of an intro on Guadalupe and what the experience is like.
Going down, the first thing you're gonna feel actually is the pressure in your ears. So what you're gonna do, you can put up your mask for now and hold it right there.
I am the ocean's greatest fright, feared for my strength, my speed and might. Millions of years I have stood tall. I am the one to rule them all.
Carcharodon carcharias, the great white shark. A name that needs no further explanation. A synonym for fascination, intrigue, fear. Being more than 400 million years old, this large mackerel shark can be found around the world in all coastal and offshore waters with temperatures between 12 and 24 degrees Celsius. And yet, one particular place stands out. Far off the coast of Mexico, an ancient volcanic island rises from the deep waters of the Pacific. A barren and rocky landscape with deep trenches and steep cliffs. This is the island of Guadalupe. Home to an abundance of elephant seals, California sea lions and Guadalupe fur seals. This mysterious island has become the best place in the world to observe great white sharks. The main reason for this is its crystal clear and calm waters, but even more so, the great numbers of sharks which can be seen here between the month of June through December. Guadalupe fur seals and elephant seals were almost wiped out by irresponsible human hunting practices in the 19th century, but they rebounded to healthy-sized populations from tiny groups of survivors. Great whites can reach lengths of more than 20 feet and can weigh in excess of 5,000 pounds. They have been tracked in depth deeper than 4,000 feet beneath the ocean's surface. Mighty numbers for a mighty animal. And yet, seeing them, especially for the first time, in their natural habitat has provoked a realization in almost every single person Nautilus liveaboard ever had on board during those expeditions. And the realization is that this animal has been greatly misunderstood and misjudged for the longest time. That it has been falsely depicted as an evil and cold-blooded killing machine of humans. Nothing could be further from the truth. For the majority of their time, great white sharks move slowly and calmly through the water. They almost never show any aggression towards divers in the cages. They just do what great whites do. They all have unique personalities, which you grow very accustomed to after you have spent some time with them. As your fear for the animal diminishes, your understanding and respect for it grows at the same time. This newly gained understanding effectively helps to improve the overall image of this amazing and powerful apex predator. After you have completed a great white trip aboard one of our vessels, you will certainly see those animals with different eyes. That is not to say they should be taken lightly. When they do strike, they do it with an astonishing explosiveness, which makes it clear that you don't want to stay in their way when they are in hunting mode. The white underside and grayish topside of their bodies produce a surprisingly efficient camouflage effect when looking at them from below or above respectively. Another reason why they have become such successful hunters. Looking a great white shark directly in its eye will deeply touch every person. In fact, its eyes are not entirely black, as they are often described, but also show traces of blue. The magnitude of an encounter with a famous great white shark is something which is hard to describe, but one thing we know as a fact. It will change the way you see sharks in general. It will make you a more educated and humble human being. Getting to know great whites is a deeply rewarding experience. There are many things out there greater than us, and the great white shark surely is one of them.
Great. Okay. Next, perfect. Thank you for the next slide. Just as a point of interest, we saw the Guadalupe fur seals on the beach, and that population, which is from the Aleutians all the way down to Baja California, was believed to be extinct. It was wiped out by the fur sealers in the 19th century. And then a population of 6 animals were discovered on Guadalupe Island 30 years later. And those 6 animals have grown into a worldwide population of 40,000 animals, estimated. The entire population and the health of that species comes down to a couple of scared animals cowering on Guadalupe Island. And the sharks are much the same. White sharks are very misunderstood. Next slide, please. I had no interest at all in diving with white sharks. I've been running dive boats for 28, almost 29 years now. And the first time a dealer suggested that we take our boat, one of our boats, to Guadalupe Island, I went, nah, I don't want to sit in a cage. I don't want to, it's going to be boring. Maybe I'll see one or two sharks come by. That's not my idea of being in the water. I'm a scuba diver. I love to dive. And I had my arm twisted, and we went out there on 2 trips. And all my misconceptions were blown to smithereens. These are very beautiful, charismatic animals. It's not safe to go outside the cages of them. We used to do that years ago, and it's not safe. The animals themselves, they're apex predators. Perhaps an orca is one rung above them. They do tangle, and what are called oceanic orcas are believed to be able to take on great white sharks. Other than that, these are apex predators. They're smart, they're charismatic, they're full of personality. I should qualify to say that they're not all smart. They're just like humans, not to anthropomorphize them, but you get you do get the sharks that maybe didn't graduate from kindergarten, and then you get the very, very smart ones. Like there's one shark, we call him Bruce. We have a name for every one of the 366 animals. And Bruce used to come down the keel of the boat at noon, and it was always just around noon when the sun's at its highest, and he'd sneak up, he'd come behind the cages and come roaring up trying to get a bait. And he did this every day. He was a very smart, wily shark. We don't feel fear from almost any of these sharks, with a very rare exception. There's one animal, his name is Thor. And when he goes by, the hair on the back of everyone's neck stands up. It's not because he is showing threatening or menacing behavior. It's just he sends off some sort of vibe, and you know he's that 1 in 40 sharks that give us a reason to stay in the cages. We quickly came to love these animals. The cage is a vehicle in which to watch them. Next slide, please. We use a combination of surface cages and submersible cages. And I believe that combination both keeps the interest of the sharks, makes it really interesting for the sharks, but it also gives you a super cool experience. So you're not just hanging off the transom of a boat, but you are descending down into 30 feet of water surrounded by sharks. Every year we've seen more and more sharks, and we're deeply concerned what's happening right now during the shutdown without any protection for them. Last year, we had numerous trips when we would see 10, 11, 12, at one time, 13 frickin' sharks around the boat. So if you can imagine, you're hanging in the blue, 245 feet of water. It's a beautiful cobalt blue with 125-foot visibility, and everywhere you turn your head, there's a white shark, 13 of them. Small one, 12 to 14 feet. Subadults are under 10 feet. Big mamas can be 17 or 18 feet long. Next slide, please. Now, this is your classic male. As I'm sure all the divers among us know, you can tell that it's a male because of the claspers at the back underneath the shark. And when I do this presentation to an audience, I can see everyone nodding and going, yep, that's a big shark. That is not a white tip reef shark, that's for sure. Look at the girth on him, the size on him, the smile that he's got. Now keep this in mind. Next slide, please. That is a big mama. That is a really big shark. That one is 17 feet long. We have some 18 footers. And the difference, the girth on these massive females, can we slide backwards one slide, please? Okay, you see the difference? That's the boys versus the girls. Okay, next slide, please. And next slide. So there's different seasons to the sharks. These are migratory animals for the most part. We estimate that the population is probably somewhere between 450 and 600 animals. And a guy named Peter Klimley at UC Davis is the expert on estimating the number of animals. I don't quite understand the science behind it. They see the number of animals, are able to extrapolate it outwards. And we know that of that population that comes and goes, there are a certain number that are in the bay and that are interested in the divers. We anchor on the top of a 245-foot plateau as close to the drop-off as we can. So a couple of 100 feet behind the boat, there's a drop-off that goes way, way, way deep. In our theory, or my theory, is that the sharks are going up and down over the edge, down into the deep water. They come back into the relatively shallow water to feed. And if we anchor in that spot, just in from the lip, we see the sharks. So the basic migration and what's happening is we see males in July and August. In fact, the males start showing up in May. Most males are there by June. We believe that all the males are there by July. The females start showing up in August. And of course, they don't know the rules, so there's always exceptions. By September, we've got the females showing up. This particular image, you can see whether those are males or females, yeah, by looking. The one on the right is clearly showing its claspers. The one on the left is not showing claspers. So you've got interesting behavior here between the males and the females. When it's the boys, I say it's like a bunch of adolescent teenage boys all jostling for attention. That's when you get the most number of sharks. That's when you get behavior where the sharks are paralleling, swimming next to each other, and the smaller shark peels off. When the females show up, of course, the boys come to their senses and start behaving, and the females rule the roost. By October, we get the reproductively successful females are back for what we believe is mating. They're there in October, November. During this entire time, there is very little going on in the way of predatory behavior. And something that's really interesting that is super cool is we see the sea lions coming out, and in the middle of all these sharks, you'll see a California sea lion with his butt up in the air, head down, watching the sharks. And I have witnessed and watched the sea lions come in and nip at the tail of the white sharks and then bomb out of the way. I can't begin to explain that behavior. It's as if you go onto the interstate highway and try and tag cars as they go past. Interestingly, in October, November, the tuna come in, and we've seen the tuna come in, and they've also hit and come off the caudal fin, the tail fin of the sharks. Very, very, very strange behavior, very interesting behavior. Next slide, please. So with the migratory behavior, and I'm just going to dive in just a little bit into the biology and the behavior of the animals. A number of years ago, there was a satellite tagging program, and I was absolutely dead set, angry, doing everything I could to stop it, where they were using a converted Alaska king crab boat with a platform on the side. They were fishing for the sharks, pulling them onto the platform, pulling them out of the water, drilling a hole in their dorsal fin, and putting these satellite tags on. And I thought it was miserable, unfair to the sharks, and dead set against it. But in retrospect, it's given some very, very interesting science. So what you're looking at is the depth that the sharks dive to. In January, these are on sharks that have gone offshore, which I'll show in the next slide. You can see that they're doing some very deep dives. They're mostly at the surface, and they're doing these deep dives, maybe once a day. By April, when they're on the move and they're coming closer to shore, they're doing a couple of dives a day. And then when you look at the behavior in May, when they're over where we are, you can see that they're doing a lot of dives. It looks like they're going up and down. If you look at the top slide, you'll see that's 200 meters. And if you look at the third slide down, you'll see that the scale goes down to 600 meters. So the behavior during the year changes considerably, a lot. Next slide, please. Just take a quick look at the animals themselves. The gestation period is 18 months. So what happens is, we believe the females come to Guadalupe, They meet the guys, they go out on a date, they have sex. This is in October, November. This is the biggest females are the first ones to hook up. And then they disappear. They go out into open ocean and they stay out there for 18 months. We believe that the pregnant females don't come back the next year. The following year, in April or May, they come into the Sea of Cortez and some nursery areas off Baja California, and they have their pups. And the pups have very soft teeth. They survive inshore, shallow waters with eating crustaceans and crabs and stuff like that. Their teeth aren't hard enough for them to be able to survive the trip out to Guadalupe. What's super interesting is that, or interesting to me, is that in the last couple of years, we've been seeing newborn sharks out of Guadalupe. Something is changing. There's a change in the behavior. Well, how do you get a newborn shark out of Guadalupe? And the obvious answer is that there has to be a nursery out there that's newly developed, because that's never happened before. And I think it's only divers who say that, forgive me for my dog, he just saw, hang on, I'm sorry. I think it's only divers who see a newborn shark, which is 6 to 7 feet long, and think that's super cool. And I'm reminded of one of our first years down there when we were still allowed to do shoreline tours in the inflatable boats and the Zodiacs. And I think it's only on a dive boat could you have a 18-foot rubber boat full of divers cruising along in the ocean, being chased by a very big great white shark with both its caudal fin and its dorsal fin out of the water. It was probably a 16, 17-foot long shark. And in any other kind of boat, it probably would have been going for the flare guns, the shotguns, everything else, calling the Coast Guard and declaring a mayday. But of course, on a dive boat, what did they do? Turn the inflatable around, got as close as they could to the shark. Everyone had their cameras in the water trying to get pictures of it. It's something I'll never forget. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so where do the sharks go? What does this look like with this migratory pattern? You can see Baja California, Guadalupe Island on the right side of the screen, and you can see California further north. There's two large areas for great white sharks of California, Farallon Islands and further south, and then there's Guadalupe Island. And we call the shared offshore foraging area SOFA. We also call it the offshore cafe. And so what happens is that virtually all the sharks have left the inshore areas, including Guadalupe, by January or February. They go out to this shared offshore foraging area, which is actually where we believe the mantis might be going. It's very, very rich in life there. The squid are there, the whales are there, tuna are there. It's very dense feeding area. Some of the sharks continue off to Hawaii, which is on the left-hand side of the screen. And some of the sharks stay in the shared offshore foraging area for a year or two. Most of them return to Guadalupe. So it's a migratory pattern. The males leave Guad, go out to SOFA, and usually come back. Somewhere we believe between 10, 15 sharks might stay at Guadalupe year round. There's 3 or 4 sharks that are believed to be permanent residents of Guadalupe. Okay, next slide, please. Now, this is really interesting. This is from that satellite tagging program that I was dead set against. And each color is the satellite tag on an individual shark. So on the right side of the screen by Baja California, you can see Guadalupe Island. And you can see that all the dots converge. You can see the SOFA, the offshore cafe, where again, they're wandering around and fairly close. You can see there's one outlier who clearly is doing his own thing and wandering in some sort of erratic pattern and ended up north of Hawaii. I guess he probably figured he was due for a vacation that year. And you can see a couple of clusters around the northern shark habitats in California. Next slide, please. Now this is completely different. These are the females. So you can see that a lot less dense concentration in the offshore foraging area. But what's also interesting is you can see how how most of them are going into the inshore areas, which gives us some real insight into where we think the nurseries are. One of them, the red one and the green one, went all the way up into the top end of the Sea of Cortez, which is cool. The red one, unfortunately, its tag data stopped, and we can only hope that it was a problem with the tag, not with the fishermen. There is an illegal fishery in Mexico, and it's something that we fight all the time. The shark fishing season in Mexico opened on August 1st. Great white sharks are protected, but the fishermen in the Sea of Cortez typically take 3, 4, 5 animals a year. And the saddest thing of all is the animals they're taking are the reproductively successful females in there. The black market value on a white shark makes it very attractive to the fishermen. Next slide, please. So how do we dive with these sharks? We have 3 vessels out there, the Bellamy, the Explorer, and the Undersea, or we would have out there in normal times if we weren't in the middle of the crisis. And we use 2 different styles of cages. So the cages marked A are the surface cages. Now, when we first started doing Guadalupe, the consensus was that you had surface cages, you had an hour in, an hour out, the bell rang. When the bell rang, you either got in the cage or you missed your turn and you waited 2 hours and you stayed in that cage for an hour and then came out, and nobody had ever heard of or thought of using submersible cages. We tend to mix things up and do what we think is crazy but is going to work. So we do this very differently than our competitors. Surface cages, unlimited diving. You want to hop in for half an hour before you have your cup of coffee in the morning? Cool, the cages are open at 6:30 in the morning. You want to stay in for 2 hours? That's great. The first morning that we get out there, it can be a little bit tough to have unlimited cage time, but you'll still get lots of cage time. The boat record for 3 days is Jeff Bozanik, who did 31.5 hours over 3 days. The submersible cages, which are marked B, go down 30 feet, and they're open to certified divers. We get almost over a fifth, 20% of the people who come on these trips are not certified divers, and they're very welcome to use the surface cages. The submersible cages, you get 3 dives a day, more if space is available. And they're 2 very different experiences. Next slide, please. There you have one of our ships, the Bellamy, and you can see the guys rigging the cages. So on the left is one of the submersible cages, and in the water is a couple, or on the right is one of the surface cages. Our cage design continues to evolve and change. We just retired our oldest cages, which are almost 20 years old, and we've built 4 mega cages that are 13 feet long and very different design. They actually have an escape platform where one side of the cage comes down and there's an exterior ladder to get to the surface. You pull a lever, the front of the cage drops away, the ladder's in the center, the top of it's solid, all sorts of improvements. But that's pretty typical of what we do, is we listen, we think, we get a lot of people give us lots of ideas, and we just keep on going. Next slide, please. Okay, that is our presentation on Guadalupe. I think Cheryl's going to take questions at the end. And with that in mind, I'm just going to briefly move on to several other destinations. I wanted to focus on Guadalupe. It's a misunderstood type of diving. Most divers go, nah, I don't want to do cage diving. And I'm reminded of Dan Orr, who is was president of DEMA and was, I think, president of Divers Alert Network for 15 years. He's got a master's degree in marine biology. He's a very, very, very good guy. And he decided to come out with us once. He's done a ton of diving. He decided to come out with us once and do a Guadalupe trip. And if Dan's online, he'll correct me, but I believe he's now done 18 trips. He does 2 trips a year. Can't get enough. And that is the magic of these white sharks. Charismatic, powerful, beautiful, and you look into their eyes and it touches your heart. We are a flaky company. We talk about emotion. We talk about the effect that the animals have on us, how lucky we are to be in the water with the animals. The mantas at Socorro, which we've been diving with for 20 years, are, it's an emotional diving experience. It's more than just a bucket list, get in the water and see some mantas. You can see mantas all over the world. What's very special about this particular specific population is that, and now here's the flaky part of Nautilus, is that if your heart is open, if you're calm, if you look the mantis in the eye, they will interact with most people. And it's actually not so surprising. When you think about your dogs, and my dogs were just barking up a storm here a minute ago, we have no hesitation in thinking that dogs communicate with us, dogs look us in the eye, dogs sense how we're feeling, dogs give us comfort, give us love. The mantas are no different. They just happen to live in the water. Our Socorro trips leave from Cabo San Lucas, where we have a dive center. It's a one-day sail out to these islands. The actual correct name of the islands is the Revillagigedo Archipelago. But years ago, our predecessor out there felt that Revillagigedo was probably a little bit difficult to sell and named the product after Socorro Island, which is the largest of the islands. We dive 3 out of 4 of the islands. San Benedicto is a very recently active volcano. It erupted in 1955 and the island more than doubled in size. Socorro is the big island. Roca Partida is the top of the volcanic plug, the lava plug of a volcano that's 11,000 feet deep. We anchor on the top of the volcano in 245 feet in open ocean. So these trips are a little bit different than Guadalupe in that we're not in sheltered water all the time. We always tell people that the best way to deal with these trips is drugs and alcohol. Don't get the wrong idea. By that I mean gravel and a nice glass of wine on the ride out just makes it a lovely trip. The reason to go to Socorro, next slide please, is the interaction with the mantis. And they will look you in the eye. They're very, very crafty. They usually wait until your SPG is showing 700 or 800 psi before they come in for the interaction. Smart divers stay shallow, so they have more air. Socorro is loaded with life. We have over 10 species of sharks, maybe more. We're not sure about oceanic white tips. We saw one once many years ago. We're not sure about thresher sharks. We have seen them in a net that we, on a fisherman, we intercepted. We've never seen them in the water. The dolphins of Socorro over the years have changed their behavior from seeing them at a distance to cruising in the bows of the bow wave of the boat to now coming in and being just as friendly and interactive as the mantas. That's a constantly evolving, it's Mother Nature. Things evolve, animals change, animals learn how to be with us. And there's all the small critters and octopus and lobster and all that kind of stuff. Huge schools of jacks and tuna. But the big thing is this interaction with the mantis. There's 2 different, they're not subspecies, there's 2 variations of the giant oceanic mantis. The one you're looking at, if you saw the other side, you'll see a speckled pattern. And a little chevron by the tail. That's what we call a chevron manta. Next slide, please. And this is a black manta. Typically, we think maybe 27% of the population. They are the same species. They're both giant oceanic mantas, but the blacks are clearly all black. And actually, what you're looking at on them, we call these our angels. These are clarion angelfish, endemic to the islands. They go for ridiculously high prices on eBay, which makes us ill every time we see it. And what's unique is that we typically find the animals, from the hammerheads to all the other sharks to the mantas, at the cleaning stations. But the clarion angels actually come off the cleaning station and will swim out several hundred feet into open ocean and clean the manta. That's what's going on right there. is those angels are cleaning that manta away from the reef, out in the open. Cool. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Actually, can we go back one? I'm sorry, my apologies. So I'm sort of springing a non-diving add-on or brand new adventure on you. And this combines perfectly with the Socorro trips. There are 3 saltwater lagoons on the west side of Baja California with a very high salinity, and these are birthing and mating lagoons for the gray whales. You'll see humpback whales at Socorro. We call whale season, they're there earlier, but we call whale season January 15th until the end of April. The gray whales are inshore animals. These lagoons are very famous, and the most famous of all, the highest concentration of animals, is in San Ignacio Lagoon, which is halfway up Baja California, where you see the little whale's tail on the left-hand side. And this is, I believe it's the only place in the world where you can interact with the whales on their own terms. And what I mean by interaction is these are the shallow waters of the lagoon, and if you are calm and wait and splash lightly on the water, the gray whales will come into the boat. They'll push against the side of the boat, they'll let you scratch their top, they'll roll over on their backs and let you scratch their tummies. The mums will, once they gain a little bit of confidence, the mums will push their babies into the boats, and so that you can scratch the babies too. You can reach into their mouth and scratch the baleen. It's an amazing interaction. This is a biosphere reserve, and we are operating there for the first time next February and March. This is luxury camping from Cabo San Lucas, pairs perfectly with a Socorro trip. And we are doing this up in a way that it's never been done before, with all the luxury of a live aboard and unlimited whale watching. Okay, can we go to the next? This is shot in March when we went up there. You can see the whale's on its back right now, letting people scratch between its fins.
Belly scratch. Roll up. Hey!
Okay, thank you, Kate. We can cut it off there. That's great. Thank you. Sorry, I sprung this on you. This is the first place that we've announced this. Just seemed the right time. Yes, the tents will have private toilets, bathrooms, and private showers. So this will indeed be luxury tenting. Okay, next slide, please. Just want to talk briefly, just put a pitch in for our crew. Our company is about safety, excellence, and guest experience, and our crew. And our crew, these are 2 of our captains, are the magic that make everything run in our company. Next slide, please. We have a crew of men and women from around the world, and we are all about guest experience and about the service levels. Next slide, please. We take an active, we're really obsessed with conservation and understanding the animals. And what I talked about earlier, bringing in some science on the white sharks. Certainly, no one has to sit through our presentations on board on the animals and on the science and on the biology and on the conservation. But we present that for anyone who is interested. It's a big part of who we are as a company. Next slide, please. This is Chef Julio, and he's pissed off because someone stole a chocolate chip cookie out of his galley. Just joking. He's a great guy. Next slide, please. We operate 3 boats to Guadalupe. This is a boat that I built in year 2000, 132 feet. For anyone who's been out on her before, she was stretched out, lengthened at the back, I think 3 years ago, accommodates 25 people. These are steel ships and quite different than converted smaller boats and so on. Next slide, please. This is our newest ship. She's a Bellamy. She's 5 years old since we built her. 147 feet. She is huge and very, very, very comfortable. Next slide, please. The Undersea Hunter is actually the pioneer at Cocos. She is an older boat. She caters to smaller groups. She's 105 feet. She's been stretched out since her Cocos Islands days. She was built as a submarine tender for Dr. Perry of Perry Oceanographic. Avi Klafner bought her in 1998 and put her into service out at Cocos. We bought her, put a new main deck, stretched her out, changed a lot of things, and she still has a beautiful Costa Rican interior on the lower deck. She's an older boat, very well maintained, a different style than our other boats. Next slide, please. And this is our newest boat. She's a yacht. She's different than the other ships. She doesn't do Guadalupe. She does Socorro and does Sea of Cortez. And we actually, to be completely frank, our first trips to Socorro in this boat were not successful. We had not operated an aluminum boat out there. Any aluminum boat doesn't have the ride of a steel boat, and there wasn't enough room on the back deck for proper camera tables and so on. So we scratched our heads. We took her back to the shipyard, had the naval architects and ourselves. We went through her. We've added 80,000 pounds of lead. She now behaves like a steel boat. We fabricated we had a 32-foot rigid hull inflatable boat built with big twin 225 horsepower outboards, completely different boat, big back deck, dive gear stays in the tender, only 12 guests, 116 feet. I think she's going to be, she's already proven to be very popular at Socorro. Those are our ships. Next slide, please. I'd like to, for pause for 1 second. Just wanted to touch on COVID, the virus. We ran our first trip since the shutdown in July. We did a Sea of Cortez, and then we did an exploratory going up the west side of Baja California. We take the virus very, very seriously. We developed a set of protocols that we encapsulated and formalized into a 60-page document working with a number of authorities. And in fact, in Mexico, the port captains, the harbor masters, the park authorities had no protocols. We've made our protocols available to everyone, to any operator who wants them. It's not something that we're holding as our intellectual property. And we're being very careful, very cautious. It seems to us that there's clearly this huge risk because of the virus, but at the same time, we want to go diving and we want to get back out on the water. And so we mitigate the risk in every possible way, in a thoughtful way. Our crew have all undergone a day of training just in COVID protocols, which you're going to see in just a second. So this is the video from our first trip into the virus. That was July 16th to the 24th.
Very hard, but we at Nautilus Liveaboard we are back, and we are back better. We are back stronger. We are back the safest way possible under the circumstances of the current COVID-19 crisis. The events of the past month have hit all of us very hard, but we at Nautilus Liveaboards believe that we have a responsibility to continue our mission. We owe it to just about everyone. You, our dear guests, who have trusted us for year after year. You, our dear staff, who is giving it all every single trip because the ocean is where you belong. And last but not least, you, our beloved animals in the sea, who depend on our support in the constant struggle against illegal fishing. Rebooting our operation after the needed full stop was a Hercules task which needed all hands available. Countless hours went into the redesigning and rethinking of our approach to diving and living. A long list of new hygiene protocols, pre-trip checklists and medical assessments have been put into place, which needed careful planning and crew training prior to their implementation. It is time to face the new reality. Yes, things have changed. And yet, at the same time, things have not changed. This became very clear on our maiden voyage aboard the Bellamy into the Sea of Cortez after the lockdown.
Absolutely gorgeous. Great, it circled us for like 20 minutes. It was amazing.
Strict sanitation and hygiene protocols have been implemented in all areas of the crew's daily routine. We strongly encourage guests to wear face masks, but we don't force them to. We ensure social distancing as much as possible. All of this is new and takes some getting used to at first. After all, none of us should take this threat lightly. However, after our first dives, it became immediately clear that none of these changes had any significant impact on the main reason why people want to be out at sea with us. We felt alive again after months of worrying and being locked away at home. We could forget about the world's trouble for a week. We were allowed to be happy again. Being able to get back in the water again with all of these fantastic animals showed us that all of our effort and our customers' faith in us was worth it.
It's our first trip back in a while. This COVID thing has been kind of crazy, you know, but the crew here has been outstanding with their PPE, you know, with the personal protective equipment, and I wouldn't hesitate. If you've got a chance to do it, you got to come out and do it, because at some point we got to get on with it. And I think everybody needs to come and check this out. You know, you've been home too long and it's time to get back in the water.
I think that the crew on the Bellamy, they've just really, I think, made diving possible the way that they've handled everything.
6 o'clock in the morning, before I even got going, they were already up here wiping down the handrails, making sure everything was sanitized, bathrooms, doorknobs, everything was sanitized. So kudos to those guys, and y'all did a great job.
And I was stretching out like this, and I was looking around, and the sun was going down. It was so peaceful, and it just occurred to me that there is no place in the world that I would rather be than right there, right then, right now, on the boat in this beautiful Sea of Cortez. It's just so peaceful, and all the noise that you hear back home with the TV constantly, and the news and the updates. Without hearing that, everything's just seems to go back to normal, and it's relaxing. It's really nice.
I feel much safer out on the water than I do in the middle of a big city. So this is definitely the place to be right now.
Wearing a mask, respecting people's personal space, and washing hands frequently was a little price to pay for the rewards that awaited us in the wilderness of the open ocean. Life is and has always been about changes and challenges. That is the very nature of life. We sincerely hope to welcome you back aboard very soon. Be assured that we will do everything humanly possible to safely continue our mission. We will not stop chasing our dream.
Great. Just one very quick note, just on the Gallant Lady. I had forgotten that Terry was out on that boat last fall. Our introduction to that boat, there were the boat gave us some problems, and we've spent well over dollars either replacing or overhauling the machinery, pipes, venting, air conditioning. Everything has been replaced. Structure has gone over with a fine-tooth comb. Where the skiffs were on the back deck is now 4 camera tables. Dive gear now stays in this brand new rib. We figured out a way to crew the boat differently, so we do have a full-time hostess instead of a half-time hostess on board and so on. So I'm very, very happy with how the boat has turned out. I'm very confident in her. Okay, so I'm here. Hello, ready for any questions?
Thanks, Mike. And guys, I'm going to keep my video off because Mike, as he mentioned, is out on a little tiny island, and he's going in and out with his reception before we went live. So I'm going to keep my mic off for now. But we are going to patch you through with any questions you have. So there's a Q&A box or there's a chat box. We like to put you live whenever we can directly with our presenters. So the best thing to do is in the chat box is raise your hand, and we will put you on with a Q&A with Mike and the team. So Stephanie, we have you right now unmuted if you want to go ahead and chat to Mike, Greg, and Kate.
Hi, Mike. This is Stephanie Richardson.
Hi there.
Hi there. Diving with white sharks is one of my major bucket list items, so I've been drooling this entire presentation. It was fabulous. One question I had is, are you partnering with any researchers or agencies to study the sharks while you're out there?
Oh yeah, no, we've always worked with the researchers. We have an internal program. We raise money, we donate money. We support Nicole Naseby, who's working hard on it. We have supported Mauricio Hoyas on and off, and other researchers, CISESI and so on, and we make space available to peer-reviewed undergrad and postgrad. So support, it's part of our responsibility to support not just conservation, but science. And with science, we can better understand and better help the animals.
That is awesome. So my question is actually two-part. Any idea why the nurseries might be changing?
No, it's something that there's a lot of discussion about it. The easiest answer is that somehow the newborn sharks, a shark that is presumably has pupped just a couple of months before, is somehow able to swim 180 miles across. But no one really knows. There is no evidence of a nursery at Guadalupe, except for the fact that we're seeing these newborn sharks out there. But the conventional wisdom is that they're born on the inshore waters and shallow inshore waters on both sides of Baja California, where they can survive. They have to survive on their own, and they're able to survive on small prey and soft-shelled crustaceans and so on.
Wow.
Sorry, that's not much of an answer. It's a big question, and it's fascinating. And our dream would be amazing if the shark population has changed. When we first started there, you might see sharks. If you're in the water doing all the dives, you might see 3 or 4 sharks a day, and you could go for an entire day without seeing sharks. And it's got to this crazy point now that we are seeing sharks on literally every dive. We've had trips where we've had 50 different individual animals over 3 days of diving. So has the population shifted, or has the population rebounded? We don't know. I like to think that it's rebounded. The conventional wisdom is that between the Marine Mammal Protection Act 20 years ago, which has given, there's a lot more marine mammals now, the pinnipeds and so on that they like to feed on, plus the awareness of shark conservation, plus sharks being, it's no longer legal to fish for sharks, that the population has rebounded. We see a lot more animals, maybe a lot more animals resulted in a new nursery.
We can only hope.
We can only hope. And spend more time out there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Carrie, just a quick note, I'm having a hard time unmuting anybody, so if you could keep an eye on anyone that's got their hand raised and do that for me, it's just not letting me even have the option, so.
No problem.
Thanks. Brent Emery, you're on with Mike.
Thank you. Mike, Brant Emery. How do we get into Mexico? I missed the first 10 minutes of the presentation, so if that was covered, excuse me, but how do we get into Mexico?
Don't believe what you see in the news. There is no problem getting into Mexico. You can drive in, you can fly in. The flights into Cabo San Lucas have never stopped. They were reduced in number and there weren't very many people on board in March or April. This week there's 15 flights out of the US into Cabo. And from San Diego, we've tested the border a number of times, and the hotel vans that we use are doing multiple trips a day. So while the border is reported as closed, our experience is that there's absolutely no trouble coming in. You might have a health question. If you fly in, they're going to, they might take your temperature. They might ask you if you've been in contact. The restriction is going northbound. You can't get into the U.S. Unless you have you're a citizen or a resident or have a visa.
Okay, one other question. I'm on several of the underwater photography sites, and there was some issues for a while last year about customs and bringing camera gear in. They were charging duties on that. Has that been addressed, or is that still a crapshoot?
Well, the situation hasn't changed. So the short story is that Mexico is broke, and they have no legal basis to ask for a duty. You are allowed to bring 2 cameras into the country plus your computer without any problem at all, and without any fees. That hasn't stopped the customs guys for asking for the money. When this first happened, we did a legal review on it, and we put in our know before you go pre-departure questions. We've got 1 page on this, what you should say to the customs officer, and if he still insists on money, a number you can call our lawyer on his cell phone, and he will talk to the customs agent. And if the customs agent refuses to talk to him, you put him on speaker on your cell phone so that our lawyer can talk to him. The short answer is that they're desperate for money. Worst case, you can buy your way out of it for $100. We've heard horror stories with people spending $1,000, $1,500 because customs told them that's what's due. There's no legal basis. You have to stand up to them. We will help you with that.
Okay, that's all I was curious about. Thank you very much.
Oh, my pleasure. It's a tough one on the cameras, but Mexico has been in severe economic trouble for the last year or so.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Mike, while you're on the subject, because it is being brought up in the chat box, and Terry is also asking, she's asking you to touch on, we can't get you out to Guadalupe this month, but it's not because of COVID regulations themselves, it's the permit from what we understand. We're being asked if you could elaborate on that a little bit, and then also with your other destinations, if you can let us know where people can currently go tomorrow if they're ready.
Sure. Tomorrow we leave from La Paz into the Sea of Cortez. Sea of Cortez is open. We're running our first trips ever up into Mag Bay for the sardine run and striped marlin. That'll happen in October. I met a couple of days ago with the park director for Socorro. Socorro will be open at the beginning of November. Guadalupe is closed. I don't have nice things to say about the park director, to be honest. They have no legal basis. We're fighting it like crazy. We don't know when Guada is going to open. They keep on promising. They've now promised us September 1st, but they've broken that promise a couple of times. One of our 3 boats for Guadalupe has got a permit problem. The problem is that permits have to get renewed every 3 years, which is normally you just do your permit renewal. It takes, on the day that it comes due, you do your renewal. It takes 3 weeks, you get your new permit. That's it. It's done. There's a window that you do it in. The problem is that the government offices in Mexico are closed until October 1st. So they cannot and won't process permit renewals during the closure. So our one boat, the Undersea, is it's stuck on a permit for Guadalupe. That's the only permit that we're having trouble with. Until the office is open, we can't get that boat out to Guad, even if the park is open. So it's really a twofold problem. The only problem is Guadalupe. They promised it would be open. It's still not open. I think our first trip right now is September 7th, I believe. And I would assess the probability at 80%. The Undersea is not going to go to Guadalupe this year because of the closure of the offices.
Okay, thank you. I know that's a tough question, and I know we get that question a lot all the time. When are things going to open? It's worldwide. It's constant, and unfortunately, we keep our eye on every destination. We know where each of our customers are supposed to be. Anybody that wants to get out of here now, where they can go. Things are constantly changing, so we just ask everybody to be patient and be flexible as much as you can. We know it's frustrating, and it's frustrating for the suppliers and the agencies as well. So, Mike, I appreciate you answering that question. These ones are always tough, but everybody is doing the best they can to get you out of there, navigate the rules, the protocols that we have to follow. And also make sure that you can do it safely and make sure you're not going to have any issues out there or coming home as well. So please know that.
Yeah, the only good news is that the airlines are being quite flexible on date changes and so.
Yeah, they are. Everybody has been really great with flexibility and been fabulous on working with us to accommodate everyone. I know sometimes it's not exactly how you planned or when you planned, but we are able to get everybody out there eventually, or possibly a little bit different. So hang in there, guys. But as you heard, other areas of Mexico are currently open. We have clients out there now. We have clients that came back last week from Mexico and other areas that are just no issues whatsoever going or coming. So there are other areas. And I did want to kind of add a note here. I asked Mike to concentrate on sharing about Guadalupe and the Great Whites, because as you can see, there's so much information to share just on that one itinerary. And Mike, I do appreciate it. Was a fabulous presentation with a lot of great information about the Great Whites. But I did want to mention that we had asked Mike to focus on that itinerary, but Nautilus has he mentioned, a fabulous fleet. And by no means is Great White and Guadalupe the only destination that Nautilus does well. Terry has been on the Nautilus boats at least a couple of times, been out to the Sea of Cortez, to Socorro Islands with Nautilus, and she just absolutely loves this boat, loves this operation, and all of those itineraries are fantastic. So if you need to get out of here now, Nautilus has a lot of different areas covered, and the information about the gray whales is literally, this is the first place that Nautilus has shared this, and it's really super exciting. So anybody that wants to be a guinea pig, and I'm sure some of us on the team will be a guinea pig as well, we can start talking about that one, and you could dream about swimming with gray whales. Lona O'Rourke, you've been extremely patient. I don't know if we can unmute your mic, Carrie. I think you tried. Lona's been asking which of your boats is captained by Captain O'Rourke.
The captains do move around the different boats. Lowell is on the Nautilus Explorer right now. He's on the trip that leaves for the Sea of Cortez tomorrow afternoon.
Okay, thank you. I don't know if there's anybody else has any last minute questions. I don't see any more hands up or any Q&A. If you do, this is your last chance to talk to Mike, Greg, and Kate directly. Brant, you've got your hand up again, so if you're on with Mike.
Thank you. On your Sea of Cortez trips, do you ferry people down from the States, or do we have to fly down to La Paz?
It's actually, we leave out of Cabo, Cabo is such an easy place to get to.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's gateway. Whereabouts in the United States are you?
Chicago.
Yeah, there's a direct flight from Chicago direct to Cabo. We have a dive center there, so we encourage people to come in early. We do complimentary warm-ups. We do a complimentary backscatter photo workshop if you want on how to get get the gear all set up and go out with a photo pro and do a splash, maybe do a bit of work on editing. And then the boats leave from Cabo with an overnight run, and you wake up at dive site first thing the next morning.
Sounds great. Thank you very much.
No, thank you.
Well, it looks like, no, there you go, Glenn, right in the last minute. Glenn said, Carrie, if you can unmute Glenn for me, please. I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on with my thing tonight, but Glenn, we'll try and get you on with Mike there. Bear with us.
It won't
Okay.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, there you go, Glenn.
Okay. I just wanted to know if I could get on a mailing list for the whale, for, you know, the new tour. I've actually been on your boat on the Bellamy pretty much 4 years ago now to Socorro's. Excellent.
Oh, good. You had the trip went okay?
Yeah. Well, actually, it was at the end of the season. It was a fam trip. I was with the folks on the infamous fam trip at the end of the season.
Oh, okay.
You remember?
Yep.
Yeah. So, but I love your operation. I love the boat. The whole thing. And I was wondering if there's a mailing list or something for the.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sure Cheryl or Terry, if they get your information, they're at the top of the list. And it's whether you book through us or book through Cheryl and Terry, you get more love booking through them, and the price is the same. So we're going to, they'll be the first to know with all the dates of the trips and everything that's involved on that.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Mike. Yeah, we're accepting. Me and Terry are always willing to be guinea pigs, so we're quite happy to collect names if anyone wants to be guinea pigs with us. I'm super, super excited about this itinerary. I think it's going to be an absolutely fabulous experience. So anyone that wants to, if you want to email us at info@deepblueadventures.com, we will collect a list, and as soon as we have those dates released and rates, we will get them to you, and you will be first to know before we even put it out on our website or our Facebook. Mike's done something for us tonight, sprung us an awesome surprise, put us here with this exclusive news, and so we're going to make sure that you're the first to know before anybody else if you're interested. So email us at info@deepblueadventures.com. So I think all of our questions are answered for now. I know we've kept Mike and the crew past time, and you guys as well, but I really, really appreciate you hanging in there with us. We never like to rush anybody off if you're enjoying the evening with us. Mike, I want to thank you once again, you and your team, for your time and for that really informative and beautiful presentation. And I know you've got your hands full with so much right now. So thank you for taking your evening to share with us on this.